History books are filled with the events, dates, and names that are important in our understanding of the past. But everything a textbook teaches leaves out more than it includes. Every movement has more than a leader. Where are the stories of those people? Every date to remember was felt in the lives of people that history does not remember. How were they affected? Where is the story of your great-great-grandmother's arrival in America? What is the story of your great-grandfather's work in the coal mine? Will the story of your life be a story your grandchildren will know and tell? How do we come to understand history as it was lived by ordinary people in that time? For most of us, the daily lives of our ancestors are not in history books, but the stories are not lost. For hundreds of years, people have kept records of their days. Today, we find those records and the stories they tell in an amazing number of places. Old calendars list farm chores and livestock records. Family Bibles record births, deaths, and weddings. Letters speak of family members leaving to live far away and others returning. Dictionaries hide small scraps of paper with family notes and poems. Yearbooks hold school records and photos. Personal journals and diaries are golden gems on the road to understanding history in real time. The published novels of local authors often begin with family stories kept alive on front porches. History is so much more interesting when we see it connected to people like us. And so, we look in the margins of cookbooks and yearbooks, of dictionaries and diaries, of calendars and accounts because life's only true lessons are writ small in the margins.
During the winter of 1798 to 99, several cabins were built and fields were cleared for corn. Among the first was Abraham Cox Sr., who settled above the big spring below the mouth of Sugar Hollow on the west bank of Cedar Creek. At that time, the hollow was a large sugar orchard. The first spring that Cox and his wife lived in their cabin, they made several score maple sugar cakes, which they molded in piggins, a Scottish word meaning a small pail or ladle with a handle on the side. One night, just as they were ready to sugar off, the syrup boiled down until it was about to crystallize, a large bear invaded the cabin and began to feast upon the cakes stacked on the wide walnut split log at the back of the room. Cox was a bear hunter, but he had never faced a situation like this. While he was deciding upon the best method for the eviction of the bear, his wife kept yelling, "Thus do something! Thus do something!" Cautiously circling outside the cabin, Abraham yelled back, "Thus do something yourself!" Grabbing 2 blazing pine knots, Mrs. Cox entered the cabin, routing the marauder. As the bear ran out of the door, Cox killed him with his axe. During the fight, the sugar in the kettles was burned, but the couple kept a large bearskin for years as a reminder of their exciting battle.
By far, the busiest place in town was the Claiborne Courthouse. Men sat at desks, scribbling with pens dipped in pokeberry ink. One of the men asked Mr. Woods if he might be of assistance. "We aim to be married. We're here to apply for a license." The man looked over his nose from Mr. Woods to me, then back. "I'm sorry, I don't believe that's possible." He picked up his pen to commence scribbling, only to find Mr. Woods' hat placed firmly over the pen. "I believe it is possible," Mr. Woods, in a level, hard level voice said. "I can't. She can't. She's a white woman," he sputtered. "I can. She can. We will. Find Hugh Goines. Say Steve Woods is making ye uneasy." The little man scurried out. When the door reopened, a tall, bearded man strode through. "Morning, Steve. Good to see ye again. Is there a problem?" "I aim to marry Ms. Honeycutt here. We came to apply." The bearded man glanced in my direction. "We're here to marry proper, and your clerk seems to have made a wrong assumption." "I'm sorry, Steve. I'll get the matter set straight. I'll only be a few minutes." When he disappeared, I stepped to Mr. Woods' side. He was as taut as green hide. "Is something the matter?" "Everything is fine, Miss Honeycutt. This is business atween me and the court. As soon as this is finished, I aim to find us a marrying man." A few men stared, then quickly glanced away. Why is it, any place but a kitchen, men act like women are a meddling? After a bit, the red-faced clerk returned, carrying a book and paper. He never looked up, just commenced asking questions. "Your Christian name is? Ye are a Christian, Steve Woods?" "S.A. Woods will do." "And the young lady's name is?" "Nancy Luhaney Honeycutt," I spoke up breathlessly. Spinning the paper around, Mr. Woods read silently, raised his eyes to meet the clerk, who returned a look of defiance. Afore a body could blink, the Indian seized the man with both hands. Instantly, the other clerks were on their feet, but the Indian lifted the little man so high the poor fellow found himself looking down, toad's eye to hawk's eye, noses touching. Then the Indian dropped him. Mr. Goines appeared in the midst of the fray and ordered the clerk to leave the room. "Steve, I apologize. He's a good clerk, but he's highly opinionated. I know how you feel." "Man like that has no place in government," Mr. Woods growled. "And Hugh," he added pointedly, "ye don't know how I feel." Mr. Goines hastily assembled the papers, and this time Steve nodded his approval, and there on the very bottom, his hand guiding the pen, made lacy lines and curlicues. I was spellbound by the beauty of it. Steve took the pen and handed it to me. Dumbfounded, I was. Never wrote nothin' in my life. "Hold the pen like this," Mr. Woods said tenderly, guiding my hand over the paper, "and make a mark that way. Then another mark, crossing this way. That's called making your mark, Miss Honeycutt. Court clerk allus sign as a witness, meaning they saw ye make your mark over your name. That's your name, written right there. When we're married, the marrying man will write in this book attesting that he married us proper. Ye said ye wanted to be married proper, remember? He'll sign his name too. The book will be kept here for years and years." I was awestruck by the idea, but outside on the courthouse steps, I asked, "Was something the matter, Mr. Woods? What did the clerk have an opinion on?" A long moment passed afore he answered. He thought ours an interracial marriage, Ms. Honeycutt, he said with loathing. That means he, in the name of the court, thought of me as not the same kind of people as whites. Well, I swanny. What in the name of the court did they think when a Baptist marries a Methodist? Mr. Woods guffawed with delight. Come, Miss Honeycutt, let's find us a marrying man. And so, as the Cherokees say, his soul came into the very center of my being, never to leave. On the 30th day of November, in the year 1852, before Mr. J. G. Palmer, Justice of the Peace, we were married proper.
The scene was a cabin in Campbell County. A group of 7 sat around a dinner table. The meal was finished. The wife and mother hovered behind George Taylor's chair as he addressed his sons. George Taylor realized he was waging a vain struggle, but a principle was at stake. A Confederate of unswerving constancy and a Democrat, George Taylor argued, threatened, pleaded with his boys. He described the best he could how the South had been mistreated. Now that war was upon the land, his sons must take down their rifles and join in the fighting. In his two-fisted, rugged way, he loved his sons, but George Taylor typified the mental stature of the generation by his devotion to the cause of the South. To him, Jeff Davis was a god. When he had finished, silence reigned. He waited for his answer. The atmosphere was tense. A love of home and parents struggled that day in the hearts of those 5 stalwart sons for supremacy over the independence of spirit and thought that characterized the pioneer of East Tennessee. Out in the yard, a hound barked. The second son, Jim, rose and walked to the door. The eyes of his brothers followed him. He stood for a moment, peering out, and then he turned to his father. His voice was husky, but he spoke in even, positive terms. "Pa, we are going away tomorrow to join the Army. The Union Army." George Taylor's body stiffened. Abruptly, he pushed back his chair and strode stormily from the house. Mother Taylor stood white-faced and trembling as she mumbled a prayer. I spent 72 years underground, mining coal. People tell me it was a hard life, but I'd lost both my parents before the age of 5, so I guess that changes your sense of what hard means. Safety in the mines is hard. Accidents are hard on the living left behind. I can tell you that firsthand. I led the rescue that pulled 184 bodies from the Fratterville mine in 1902. And it wasn't my only brush with tragedy. I was in Sunday school, 12 years of age, when the news came that President Lincoln had been assassinated. That was a hard time. The war, the mines closing. Miners would get a gallon of beer and set their sons to fighting. Most boys got a few pennies when they won. My stepfather kept his pennies. He kept my wages, too. He started me off in the mines the year I turned 8. I fought to live. I fought for safety in the mines. I fought for my family. I never ran from a fight, and I never started one either. I spent almost 40 years as General Superintendent of Mining. I faced strikes and scabs, pistols and dynamite, men who died and men who tried to kill me. I never held a grudge. I gave a man his job back if he asked for it. Keep serene and keep digging. That was my approach. It works in the mines, and it works in life. Get lazy, you lose. Give up, you lose. Quit, you lose. Plant your feet on the granite of your principles and never forsake them. I never swore, and I didn't work with those who did. I was never drunk in my life. I paid my debts and kept my word and provided for my family. I was born poor and uneducated and spent my life working to change that. I intend to be learning about life as I draw my last breath. No, now that life's rush and hurry are behind me, looking back, I wouldn't call my life hard. If life feels hard, figure out why and correct it. Keep serene and keep digging.
My husband was so much more than he'll let on. He was a hard worker and a gentle soul. Oh, he'll fuss that I'm saying so, but true gentleness requires great strength, and don't you let anyone tell you otherwise. My quiet, private husband served 2 terms as mayor of Jellicoe and named their school board. He could slam a pick into anthracite coal faster than men half his age, and he knew the names of every flower around our house. His fists were tough enough to win every fight, and delicate enough to play the piano better than I do. He endured every hardship the elements threw at him, but spoke often of the scent of warm earth after rain or honeysuckle in spring. He only went to church to please me and to hear the music, yet he never drank or swore or spoke ill of another. He had no parents to love and guide him, and grew to be a wonderful provider and loving father to our 7 children. Why tell you this? It seems to me that manhood is often measured by things that do not make a man at all. A man is more than quick fists, brute strength, and broad shoulders. A man is a whole person, and a good man is strong and kind, brave and loving, a fierce defender, and a gentle soul. I was blessed to marry a good man.
Homer Rodehaver grew up in Jellicoe to the sounds of the railroad being built, coal cars rumbling by, and mountain ballads sung in the evening hours. But his favorite music was always Negro spirituals, because they emphasized harmony and rhythm and had a definite religious purpose. His first memories were of the Negro laborers who sang at their work and played with a special tempo for every mood. With the first money he earned, he bought a valve trombone. At 18, he joined the 4th Tennessee Band during the Spanish-American War. During World War I, he served in France with the YMCA, bringing good cheer to thousands of soldiers. Homer spent 20 years as the music director for the enormously popular evangelist Billy Sunday. Together they held 300 revivals with an estimated 100 million people attending. Rodehaver toured the mission fields of the world, from Egypt's Nile River to the Red Sea, from leper colonies in Japan to Upper Congo River villages. He spread the idea of Easter sunrise service throughout the United States. Homer had a gift for uniting people with music. As a boy with his slide trombone, Homer led crowds of miners, railroad laborers, and mountaineers who sang together the folksy songs of the Highlands. As an adult, Homer made people sing, from African villagers to John D. Rockefeller. Will Rogers said, "Rhodey is the fellow that can make you sing whether you want to or not. I think he has more terrible voices in what was supposed to be unison than any man in the world. Everyone sings for Rhodey." In February of 1952, his favorite trombone was stolen, and he never played again. Homer died the 18th of December, 1955. Easter morning Sunday services continue all across the USA.
In the early 1900s, blacks were not allowed burial in La Follette Cemetery. A large family named Sharps, living in Long Hollow, used a section of their land to bury family. In 1923, several gentlemen of the community pooled resources and purchased 3 acres of land in Long Hollow from Squire Sharp so that blacks of the community would have a cemetery, the Long Hollow Cemetery. The cost of a burial was $15 per plot. Usually, members of the community dug the grave at no cost. In the early 1900s, a school was built in Jellicoe to educate the children of black families employed in the coal mining industry. By the year 1931, this old 4-room, 2-story building with a potbelly stove in the middle of the floor was elevated to high school status and approved for 2 years of high school work. But parents wanted a new school building and a 4-year high school education for their sons and daughters. Maddie Babb was an elementary student at the time. The 4 black communities of La Follette, Jellicoe, Clinton, and Lake City agreed a new school should be built in La Follette. The PTA, the Campbell County Board of Education, the Superintendent of Schools, and the county court did nothing. Parents took the battle to the state level and won. Tennessee provided funds for a new La Follette Colored High School building to house both the elementary and high school black students. Maddie Babb graduated from the La Follette Colored School in 1935. The new school opened on Monday, August 22, 1938. The La Follette Press reported, "Everybody seemed to have been very much elated over the beautiful modern building." Maddie Babb went to college, received her degree, and returned to teach 1st and 2nd grade in the Jellicoe Colored Elementary School. The school had approximately 40 students in grades 1 through 6 and 2 teachers. With the opening of the new high school, children from Clinton and Lake City commuted to school by Greyhound bus. Students from Jellicoe were driven to school by car. When the enrollment increased, they came to school by Greyhound bus until they were supplied with a yellow school bus and bus driver in the late 1940s. That was a time of joy. They no longer had to walk long distances to and from bus depots, waiting in small rooms for colored only, and wait until all the whites had boarded the bus before they could be seated in the back. These children continued their daily ride to the La Follette Colored High School until integration closed the doors in 1965. Maddie Babb taught students in 7th through 12th grade, served as one of the principals, and coached the girls' basketball team. Once students reached the 7th grade, failure was not an option. Each student earned a diploma. In 1965, when the La Follette Colored High School was closed, Maddie Babb was one of 3 teachers absorbed into the Campbell County school system, where she taught until she retired in 1981. Miss Babb took on the task of keeping the photos and records of the Black community schools in Jellicoe and La Follette. When she died, she was buried in Long Hollow Cemetery without a headstone. In the year 2000, the La Follette High School Alumni Association purchased a headstone for Maddie Babb's grave in Long Hollow Cemetery. Maddie's headstone is a small tribute to a lifelong educator devoted to the students of Campbell County, Black and white.
The store was started in 1921. My father kept telling us customers made it possible for us to buy a home and a car. He never wanted to leave Campbell County. That was a big deal, and, of course, the stories that people could not believe in those days that there were Jewish people in Tennessee. We were the only Jewish family here. We grew up as part of the neighborhood. The only Jewish training we had was holidays when we went to Knoxville. We were just normal boys growing up, baseball, outdoors. It was a real nice community. The interesting part about growing up in La Follette was that there were two different societies. La Follette, Jellicoe, that was all coal miners. If you went from La Follette up the valley, the Cumberland Gap and Middlesboro, that was farmers. So we did business with coal miners and farmers, two distinct, different types of people. We did a lot of charge business. I can't speak for the coal miners. From my point of view, they had a hard life. They spent their money. I mean, if they got paid, which was very little, it was all spent. My dad would say, "Now boys, Saturday is a big day. We'll open 8 o'clock and close about midnight, so we got to go to bed early Friday." We all worked. My mother did all of the accounting. In the morning before school, I went with my dad and swept out the store and sidewalks. After dinner, one of us would go down with my mother, clean up the store and close. When we would have a promotion, my brother and they would take us into these mining camps, and we would put a circular on every front porch. Miners paid so much to the school and the church, and it was all taken out of their pay. What was left over, they got scrip, and that got converted into dollars to spend in town. They had a hard life. The women that worked in the shirt factories, they made, $5 a week. It was a big deal. But they were selling shirts for 39 cents, so you can imagine what kind of wage rates there would be. The farmers were more family-oriented people. The only time a farmer had any cash in those days was when they sold their tobacco in November, so you would keep people on credit all year. The other time they grew their vegetables, they slaughtered their meat. They would barter a lot of stuff. The guys would bring in moonshine, in these gallon jars and trade. They never let me know what was going on. We were kind of sheltered, but I know that happened. These were the days that I remember. It was a good living. My dad always liked a good car. Everybody had a phone. You went through an operator. When I went away to school, I would call home on Sundays, and Mabel, the telephone operator, would ring 282. That was our house number. "Well, Sam, I think they are over at the Sturms. I'll call over there." Our house was next to the Catholic church. The Italians that came in had their homes in a little neighborhood. They were probably the Catholic group in La Follette. They had a circuit rider. He would tell my mother, "Now, I am going to have an early service next week." So it got to be habit when these tourists would stop in La Follette for the night and ask, "Do you have a Catholic church? What time is the service?" "Well, we've got to call the Bailoffs to find out." And for years and years and years, I don't think people realized that we were Jewish. So we were growing up in a very unusual kind of surrounding. Fresh out of La Follette High School, I thought I was ready to take on the world. One October day of 1966, as I walked to my freshman biology class at East Tennessee State University in Johnson City, I noticed a young man walking toward me on the sidewalk. He was about my size, with long brown hair, a beard, and an earring in his left earlobe. Startled by the earring, I thought, "Dang, I didn't know we had pirates around here." I shook my head and continued on my way. This was the first time I ever remembered seeing a man wearing an earring, other than the old TV show called The Buccaneers, which dealt with piracy on the high seas. Men did not wear earrings. In my home county, nothing out of the ordinary was ever on display except when the circus carnivals came to town. Later, as I reflected on my encounter with the pirate, I began to see things with new eyes. My old eyes were small-town Appalachian-focused. My new lens saw a different reality. As Bob Dylan said, "For the times they are a-changin'." The miniskirts, the use of alcohol and marijuana by students, the growing opposition to the Vietnam War, minority students on campus, and an explosion of different kinds of music were all manifestations of the changing 1960s social revolution. My university professors began to expose me to knowledge that was frowned upon in my home, church, and community. They taught that evolution is likely a fact, not a theory. The age of the Earth is between 4 and 5 billion years. Prior to the Civil War, all slaves in the South were not happy and docile. The civil rights movement was necessary for African Americans to gain more equality, and women were equal to men and should be paid the same wages. I began to see life-altering points of view that transformed my understanding of the world. I cannot blame my new world view on those professors. My perspective began to change when I encountered that darned pirate. We live forward, but we understand backward.
We hope you have enjoyed these stories. We hope that, as you look backwards, you have gained a new connection to the fascinating history of the place where you live. We even hope that someday, as you live forward, you will become part of this history. Write a letter or a book, keep a journal, preserve your family Bible, and maybe, one day, your descendants will understand your story by looking backward into the margins of Campbell County's history.